Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So we hope to make this as conversational as possible. And I think that's kind of hard with the form, the way we're set up and whatnot. So our slides are actually pretty minimal. And we have different ways of kind of presenting what we're going to present, but feel free to stop us at any time. Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to speak out. So I think a lot of us have a lot of experience with what we're going to present to you today, and I think your stories are going to be really valuable, and sharing that's going to be really valuable. So my name is Tim Rager. I am the Director of Technology at the Seattle Art Museum, and here we have Rebecca Menendez. She's the Director of Integration Services and Technology at the Autry, and Gary Wise, who's a Manager of Multimedia and Digital Services. So, we've been having a lot of conversations here at MCN about strategy, right? We've been talking high-level strategy. I think some of you might have been in that session. And then we've also talked about implementation, too. So I've taken a little different spin on all of that. So we'll see if this resonates with any of you. It may or may not, but we'll see. A little bit about the Seattle Art Museum. We are 3 locations, actually. Our main one's in downtown Seattle. We have an Asian art museum and volunteer park, and then we also have an Olympic sculpture park area, outdoor museum kind of thing. And we recently completed our new 3-year strategic plan with 7 major goals. 3 of them relate to this idea that we want a new CRM. So how many here is REPE? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, lots, right? So we're thinking about totally revamping that. But anyways, there's 3 kind of major goals that kind of lead up to this idea of maybe looking at CRM a little differently. One of them is engaging audiences more deeply, with a special attention to the focus audience. So I think your museums are probably struggling with this too, is we're not engaging younger people very well. We're engaging our kind of long-term constituents really well, but not millennials, or not people younger, or not even people much older. Right? So we're trying to figure out ways to do that. We want to improve the end-to-end visitor experience. I think, like many museums, we're very siloed, right? Data silos is definitely one of the things that we have, but we have cultural silos. So education does things by themselves that really doesn't involve development, that really doesn't involve IT, that really doesn't involve anybody, right? So we're all kind of running in these little silos, which is really challenging. So trying to find ways to maybe improve that, right? And also, like I was saying before, we want to deepen and broaden our support base. So just trying to figure out who else, how do we get other people to participate in the museum, other than a typical demographic we've been kind of catering to for a very, very long time now. So we thought maybe the CRM could help us. We're like, okay, wow, maybe we rethink RE and PE, because everyone hates it. I think everyone, I'm sure you guys hear that too. We don't like it, we don't want to use it, we want to try something else, blah, blah, blah. So of course, they're asking me to figure that out, right? And I'm actually pretty new. I've been at SAM for 1 year. So I've never been in museums before. I've been in nonprofits before, but not museums. So it's very different. Like, I didn't know what is that, right? So I've been spending the entire year kind of figuring out, okay, how do I do this, right? So of course, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta gather requirements. This is the first thing I gotta do, right? I'm sure you guys have all thought about that. But of course, some of the challenges, sorry, this is so small, right? But some of the challenges between what you think you should do versus what an analyst thinks it should be, versus what a programmer thinks it should be, versus what they really wanted, right? Have you guys seen this before? I mean, it's kind of funny, right? So, you have, right, how the customer explained it, and then how the project leader kind of understood it, and then how the analyst designed it, right? So, just this process in of itself can be very difficult for a lot of people. So of course my head started going around this, right? And then I'm like, well, wait a minute. I don't know if this is really right. Maybe we should talk about a CRM strategy, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys are thinking the same thing. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe we'll start there. So I'm thinking, well, that's kind of crazy, right? Because if you look at, for example, Gartner's 8 building blocks of a CRM, I'm sure many of you have seen it before. They're like, well, you got to develop a strategy and a vision, a customer value experience, and organization, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's a lot of work, right? And of course, my head was spinning when I was thinking about all this stuff. But as I'm going through this, I'm like, I still think I'm asking the wrong questions, right? And for me, I had to ask myself, am I a strategic leader? And I think that's a really hard question to ask yourself, and I'm not sure if a lot of us really are. Like I said, I'm finding a lot of us are talking about that front end of the conversation, how to create that strategy, and this is where you got to engage. And they were talking about, well, this is how we implement, and this is how we do it. But I think when it comes down to it, I think a lot of our leaders, a lot of people under us as well as above us, are going to be looking to us to figure out how to do it. And I think before you do that, you have to ask yourself, am I ready, right? So I cheated a little bit. I found these kind of 6 qualities of a leader from an Inc.com article, and I thought it was fantastic. So I kind of want to share them with you today, because I think it's really important. And I think the thing about these kind of 6 qualities is that I don't think, well, maybe some of you are, but I think for the most people, not everyone's really good at this. So I think, at least for me, I've been spending my time trying to figure out how do I become good at this, so I can not only better support my team, but better support the organization as a whole, right? So it's tough. I think it's sometimes really hard to self-reflect and be really honest about what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then trying to find ways to mitigate that, right? So one of the things they say is you have to be really good at anticipating, right? So you gotta look for game-changing information at the periphery of your industry. I love MCN. I love meeting all of you. I love hearing your stories. But at the same time, what are we doing to look outside of us? What are we doing to engage outside the museum, for-profit, other attractions, right? So one of the things I found really helpful is, so of course, being the Pacific Northwest, we're kind of a little bit isolated, right? I mean, there's kind of Pacific Northwest, and there's stuff way down in California, then everything else is on the East Coast, right? Well, what's really interesting though is I'm finding that a lot of other organizations, such as zoos, such as aquariums, such as blah, 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 they actually have the same struggles as we do, right? The theater, all this stuff. So we started meeting on a regular basis. So for example, on 11/20, actually this month, the Pacific Science Center, the Seattle Aquarium, the Oregon Coast Aquarium, Vancouver Zoo, Woodland Park Zoo, the Children's Theater Group in Seattle, as well as us, are going to meet. We're going to talk. And it's really helpful because they have a slightly different perspective on CRM, but to hear their struggles is very similar to ours. So, you know, I encourage all of you to think about that. Where else are you engaging that's outside the museum? Because I think what you can learn from them is going to be really, really helpful. I know it has been for me. Search beyond the boundaries of your business, right? Build wide external networks to help you really scan the horizon better. So, you know, for you to better anticipate what you need to do for your museum, look outside, right? So, Forbes.com, for example, they list kind of some of the upcoming things, like Internet of Things is one of those technologies you talk about that's kind of on the horizon, right? And you see people like Salesforce already creating software to help you gather data from Internet of Things, right? So I know museums tend to be a little bit slower in adopting this stuff, but this is something that's going to come down the pipe pretty soon, and we're starting to experiment with some of that, or with iBeacon, all that stuff, right? I think you're going to see that more and more. So the question is, are you good at anticipating? And here are some ways that you can, or things you can do to be a better anticipator, so to speak, right? Can you think critically? And what exactly does that mean, right? So can you reframe problems to get to the bottom of things? Can you get to the root cause of things, right? Can you challenge current beliefs and mindsets, including your own? And this could be really hard as middle management, right? Trying to not only change the people below you, but the people above you. That could be really hard. Uncover hypocrisy, manipulation, and bias in organizational decisions. So, you know, it's a political thing, right? I mean, how much time do you spend kind of understanding other people's motivations, why they do what they do, why they might make things difficult, or why they make things easy, right? So, like for me, I know the past year, I spent a lot of time out of my office. A lot of it is having coffee, going to lunch, and just really understanding what are you doing, and why, and how, and what's important to you, and how can I help you? I can't tell you, just asking that question, and it's amazing stuff that they tell me, right? So really kind of understanding, get to the root of why they're struggling with CRM, because that's what I'm noticing as well. Because people are saying, well, I want to get rid of our EMP, right? But I start asking why, I'm not sure if it's an application issue. I think it might be a process issue. I think it might be a training issue, right? So it's like really getting to the meat and bones of the problem. When someone says something to you or complains to you, exactly what is it, right? So we have to be able to think critically, be really good at it. Interpret ambiguity. This is really hard for a lot of people, right? Seek patterns in multiple sources of data. Encourage others to do the same. Encourage your people, but then also the people above you. And question prevailing assumptions and test multiple hypotheses simultaneously. So, it's like taking multiple sources of information. This is like having a conversation with everyone in the organization and trying to figure out, so what does this mean when they hate RE? What does that mean, right? So really digging and trying to find out how to figure out that answer. It's tough, it's hard, but it definitely takes some work. Make decisions. This can be really hard. I think a lot of us kind of have analysis paralysis sometimes, right? It's where you have to collect data and think about it and think about it and think about it and actually never move forward. I know that's actually a huge problem at SAM. I don't know if it is for you guys, but we've been talking about CRM for years. The conversations even before I got there, right? And I think, again, part of it is none of us is really understanding the root cause of it. But as a great strategic leader, you have to be able to make decisions, right? You have to be able to kind of frame the decisions so you get the crux of the matter. Balance speed, rigor, quality, and agility, right? I think this is great. Leave perfection to higher powers. You're never going to get it right? And it's never going to be perfect. And that's okay. That's okay, right? Just move forward and just make a decision and just do it. But of course, learn from it, right? Take a stand, include information and admit diverse views. So this is hard, right? Because even us as people, we're afraid to fail. We're afraid to do the wrong thing. But sometimes you just have to just jump in and see what happens. Align the organization. And I think this is really hard for middle managers, right? It's really easy if you're way up top, but it's harder for us as middle managers. Again, understand what drives other people's agendas, because people are people, right? They got personal things they're trying to accomplish as well as professional things. And how well do you understand that, right? And how well do you understand things that they're not telling you? They're not going to tell you everything, right? How well can you pull that out? How can you think critically enough that you can understand what's not being said, right? Bring tough issues to the surface, even when it's uncomfortable. This is really hard for a lot of people. But I think you can see if you want to be a really good strategic leader, you have to do it. And I think you can do it with heart. I mean, you can be honest and not be an asshole, right? I mean, you're a kid, but there's a way of being honest and just kind of bring this stuff out and, having people understand that you're doing this for the museum. You're having these conversations because you want to make life better for everyone. You want to make the experience better for everyone. That's the only agenda I got, right? So how do we do that as an organization? How do we do that as a team? And that's a really hard conversation. And I found even for me, I gotta have a conversation over and over. And it takes time, right? Because like with me being new, no one trusts me. Nobody knows me, right? So it's not only me understanding their agenda, but having them understand where I'm coming from too, right? And I think once you find that common ground, they'll open up, they'll talk to you, and they'll find ways to collaborate with you. And I think that's so key and so important. Assess risk tolerance and follow through to build necessary support. So again, it's about having coffee, having a drink after work, right? Forming those relationships you can truly understand, and start aligning people towards what you want to do. Learn and grow, right? So encourage and simplify, honest, rigorous debriefs to extract lessons, right? Take a look back. What did you do wrong? And how can I do it better? And even finding ways to challenge others on that. Not to point fingers, but have a conversation to figure out, okay, this part didn't go so well. What's the next step, right? Shift course quickly if you realize you're off track. And of course, celebrate successes and well-intentioned failures that prove insight. So, I think the thing here is definitely got to know your limits, right? Be honest with yourself. Figure out of these 6 traits, where were you weak or where can you improve? And so there's a little URL that is systemstruct.com. you can take a little test. It's actually very similar to the points that I listed. But it will help you kind of assess your weaknesses a little bit and try to figure out where some places you kind of need to improve on. So that's kind of been my journey. So I guess let me talk about a little about where we are now. So again, what I've been starting to do is trying to create a CRM vision. But I've been having some trouble. But I started by basically asking departments. So what's your mission and vision? What exactly are you doing? And it's interesting because some didn't have it, which I thought was fascinating, right? So I actually walked them through an exercise to figure out, okay, here's Sam's, let's see it all museum. Sam, here's Sam's mission and vision. How was yours helping to support that or help that or make it happen, right? So we did all those exercises, and then I started noticing they're really kind of all over the place. So everyone kind of has these own initiatives, and I think part of it is because of the siloing, right? So everyone's kind of doing their own thing. They're not really looking beyond their own kind of blinders. So they can, okay, this can be challenging, right? Because if I do a CRM implementation, I probably may satisfy one department, but I'm probably gonna really piss off someone else because their initiatives are different and their needs are different, and there's nothing out there that's gonna solve the problem for everybody. It's just not gonna happen, right? So I took another step back. I'm like, you know what? We really haven't talked about a digital strategy at all. But we haven't had that conversation. And I don't know who was in an earlier session with Doug, but we haven't talked about that thread that links technology with everything that's happening in the museum. So it's actually a conversation I'm going to have with my director on Wednesday next week. So that's going to be really interesting because no one's having that conversation, and I feel like I need to have it, at least start it somewhere, so we can at least have something to work off of. I think no one knows really what to do, right? So I'm basically going to say, well, here's what I think we should do. Here's that thread I think that can weave us all together. But it's going to be challenging, right? Because I need your help to break down the silos. I need your help to make sure that we're a single voice in all of this, because right now we're not. So that's kind of where I am. So I'm trying to do that first, because I feel like if I do that first, then everything else falls into place. Like social media strategy falls into place, website strategy falls into place, CRM strategy falls into place. So I need to have that conversation first, and then I gotta get all of us aligned to make sure that we all agree on what that is. So I'm hoping next year I can come back and tell you good news, but we'll see. So any questions, or what are your stories? Or what are some things you can share about challenges with management or leadership, or challenges that you have in implementing strategy, or even talking about strategy at your organization?
Well, I think that one of the challenges is that digital doesn't respect departmental boundaries. And so it's like having a teenager in the house that's kind of crashing about and eating all the food and staying in bed half the day. And so one of the things that it feels like the responsibility of digital people to do is to have the conversations you talked about and say, person A, person B over here is thinking similar things or thinking different things, and to kind of join things up.
Yeah.
And that feels really important.
Yeah.
But if you say to the senior management, is that my responsibility? They're going to say, no, absolutely not. That should be centralized through the director's office or whatever. But the truth is, they're not doing that because they don't understand digital.
Yeah, no, that's great. Anyone else have kind of a similar experience with their museum about that?
I feel like we were doing something very similar at the Portland Art Museum, and we just recently started having kind of a digital initiative group where we literally have people from every department, from finance to social media to the online collections. Just every part of the museum is coming together, and we're all just talking about what are the digital tools that we're using, how can we most efficiently take advantage of the tools that we're using, have a combined toolbox of skills, and start to kind of grow and develop. So we have our finance officer leading an Excel workshop that anybody in the museum can go to kind of bring up the digital literacies or the technical literacies of some people, finding places where things can overlap, and we can use the same digital asset management system for our collection images as well as our marketing products and things like that. So that's been one of our solutions.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's going to be the challenge one of the other challenges for me. So like, I kind of want to bring this to Kim because I kind of want her to lead it because I feel like it's not me that has to lead it, but it's her. But she needs to believe in it as well. And it feels like it's something that she can kind of corral everyone together or start the conversation. Because that's all I'm trying to do, is start the conversation, right? But I want to give them something to start the conversation with, right? Because I think they don't even know how to start the conversation. So I think that's also the
Well,
troublesome
and
part.
we didn't know how to start the conversation either. So
Yeah.
we don't have a leader. We have a group of 3 or 4 people that have kind of set up a schedule, and we're all meeting, and we're all kind of showing up, and we're kind of gotten into a
Yeah.
rhythm now.
I mean, it sounds like a great start. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. That's good. Yeah. Someone else has had it. Oh, so hand up this way. Yeah.
I'll talk about our story, although I don't know that it's necessarily a success yet.
Yeah.
So I'm coming in relatively new to the Oakland Museum of California. A decision has already been made about our CRM process. We use RE, but we were using now it's going to escape me what it is, but it just went obsolete, the ticketing software. So we had to change the ticketing software. What's that?
Vista?
Yes, thank you.
Oh.
And so we made the decision to go on to a product that would work with Salesforce. And so we didn't do the Salesforce part, we just did the first step,
Yeah.
Seriousware, and we implemented that,
Yeah.
and it's been challenging, to
Yeah.
say the least. But what we're finding is that kind of the next now, development wants to move RE. And so, because that was part of the initial plan, they're ready to go. And so now, and I'm kind of using the fact that I'm new, I'm kind of saying, whoa, 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 we gotta back up. We gotta back up. I mean, everyone wants to gotta back up and talk to the whole organization, because it is very much that finance is like, we love RE because it works so well with our finance system, and so that there's a lot of competing objectives and goals, and I think what's the challenge at the executive level is everyone wants, well, what's the best case, what's the practice, who's already figured this out?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I don't think anyone really has, right? I mean, because if we talk to our peers about their Salesforce and serious implementations, they're kind of like, well, I mean, that's kind of how they all start off as, right? I mean, it's a very challenging thing. But I think a lot of it too, I feel like a lot of organizations don't talk about strategy. They don't talk about the CRM strategy and try to figure out, okay, this is our strategy, so then what's the best tool? They tend to start with the best tool and then kind of work from there. And I'm not sure if that's the right way to have the conversation. I don't know. So it's definitely interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally gonna get busted. Sorry, Kevin.
You want me to leave?
But we just started a digital asset management project, and I came in as a consultant a couple days a week to help kind of uncover, do the needs assessment, figure out what everybody needs. And what we found is that it's less about the technological needs right now and much more about the interpersonal, the interdepartmental, and the communicative needs. Fortunately, the museum's had a lot of turnover, both the rank and file and the upper management and director staff, that they're much more willing now to, I think, to listen and really take a lot of that feedback. And so where we're at the moment is just trying to figure out what the next steps are to calm everybody's nerves, because there were a lot of solutions that were implemented but then never supported, that were kind of mandated on high, but the staff didn't know what's happening, and then try to pull back, redefine the problems, and then present to upper management to say, hey, you need to get your staff together and talking to one another again. So it's been a really interesting and kind of fun, exciting time.
Yeah. But it's kind of funny because it's amazing how I don't do anything technical anymore. All I do is have these meetings and try to understand and organize and really kind of help people be successful. And that's all the time I think. But at the same time, it's really kind of necessary and important, right? I mean, I spent a whole year trying to figure out what to do with the CRM. I just feel like we're missing all these other kind of people pieces, strategy pieces, and we have such a culture that makes it. I feel if we try to do it right now, we're going to fail miserably. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that for my museum. I don't want to do that for the people that work for the museum. I think it's so torturous, right? So, it's hard having these kind of more honest conversations with everyone, right? Because they're so territorial. And I get this all the time. I'm too busy. I can't deal with that right now. So that's why I want to have this conversation with my director and basically just say, hey, since I've been here this past year, this is what I'm seeing as a whole, these are the struggles I'm having as a whole, how do you want to do this? How do we figure out together as an organization how we move forward? So that's going to be a hard conversation to have with my director, because I don't want her to think I'm not, it's not like I'm challenging her. It's not like I think she's doing a bad job. It's the opposite, right? But I'm just saying, I just feel for me to be successful, for the museum to be successful, we got to have this conversation. And that's really hard. It's really hard. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, the basic words, I mean, how is important, what is important, but like you almost started at the beginning, why is the most important to me? Why are we going to spend time doing this? When I first got into my job, or several years ago, the head of education said, we need an app. I said, great, why? Because we need an app. And we need a CRM. Well, why? Raiser's Edge is kind of a CRM now. Even below the requirements document, why do you need it? Well, we want to be able to track people and everything they do in the museum. Why? I feel like one of my kids, right? That's always why. Why do you want to track someone? Why do you care? If you can't tell me why you care that a member has gone to this restaurant today and bought fish, then why do we have to spend the time and the money to do it? Because not only are we going to spend time and money to do it, but somebody is going to have to spend time and money to figure that out and look at it and decide if it's worth acting on. Like Sarah and I were talking about, I think last night, some of this. You can gather all the information, but you have to peeling back that onion and saying, why do you need it? Why do you need it? Why do you need it? Why are we going to spend our precious resources to develop it, to maintain it? And if you can't come up with that basic question, then the how and the what kind of doesn't matter.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and I think, I don't know if you guys do that too, but I definitely, encourage you to do that. Ask, right, why? And sometimes it's even hard to ask that if you don't have a good relationship with your people in the museum, right? So that's why I spent this past year kind of schmoozing, right? And understanding and figuring out what's important to them. And it's amazing when you do that, when you really take the time to do that, they just open up and they tell you. And it just makes it much easier, right? And it's great because now you understand. You understand why they're there, why they're doing what they do, or why they want to do what they do. It's great. So anyways, I guess we'll move on.
All right. Hi, so I'm Rebecca Menendez from the Autry. So Autry's a museum in Los Angeles, and we have art, historical, and anthropological collections. Like the Seattle Art Museum, we have 3 locations. And so we've got our main location for visitors, where we have the majority of visitors in the top left, and also the majority of our exhibitions. And then in the bottom left, we have a site that we have fewer visitors, smaller exhibitions, and that facility is actually a historic landmark in Los Angeles. It was the first museum built in Los Angeles. And several years ago, we did a project to take all the collections that were housed there and do preservation on the whole collection. So we cleaned and rehoused everything and took a lot of pictures. And during that process, the collections expanded quite substantially and no longer fit in that building. So it became clear we had to do something about that, and we decided to build a 3rd building to house the collections and also for research, so the research libraries will go there, and researchers and people who need better access to the collections will be accommodated in that facility. So the picture on the right is the new facility. It's actually rendering, and we'll every time I go there, it looks more and more like that picture. So it's kind of exciting. So today I'm going to talk about our digital assets and 2 aspects of handling our digital asset data. The first being the users and the user needs and the assessment that we're doing on kind of assessing their needs and trying to figure out what kind of systems we need to put in place. And then the other side of the coin, which is building out the network in such a way that will accommodate all that digital asset data. So we've been digitizing collections for about 10 or 15 years, and every so often we have to kind of revisit and look at all the data that we're creating and ensure that we have systems in place that are going to support the data. And and both that the user access to the data as well as the network set up that, appropriately in supporting the data. And about a year or so ago, I started getting requests for better access to the data and some issues that were coming up from a variety of different user groups. So throughout the last year, different user groups have come to me and they've said, oh, you know, we need this or that, or we're not getting the access that we need, or we're having trouble with our digital assets. And so now is one of those times that we have to reassess that data and ensure and make shifts as necessary to better accommodate the user needs. So our collection photography department started in 2002, and when we started that department, we set out processes and procedures to accommodate digital asset creation, and also we plan for growth and expansion. So this group doesn't have a problem accessing their images. Those processes that we developed in 2002 are still in place now, and as we've added more functionality to that group, we have just fit those new functions into the same processes. However, some of their tools to process the images from the time that the image is shot to the time that it reaches its final destination and put into the archive are unsupported now, and so we're looking for tools to help with that process, different tools that basically do essentially the same thing. And the other problem that this group has is that now that they have about 300,000 unique assets, they're having trouble browsing from one, you know, if they're at one campus browsing images and assets at the other campus, and so we're needing to kind of address the issue of the multi-campus and the bandwidth and searching through large amounts of data. So our second group that's come to me lately is the marketing team, and they had a different issue. They started off with just creating digital assets without thinking very much about how they were organizing them. And back when they had 1,000 images, it was no big deal for them to use their memories and find the asset that they needed for whatever they're creating. Right now they have 54,000 images, and they do not have such an easy time remembering, and with staff turnover, it's become really extremely time-consuming for them to search through their images and find what they're looking for and use them. So they definitely need a system to help them with their organization of the files, the naming and tagging, so that they have a better, can spend less time searching for images. And then our exhibit design group, they do not need help managing the digital assets that they create themselves. They didn't ask for that. I asked them if they needed it. They don't want help with that. What they want is better access to the collection photography images. So they don't use the same tools as collection photography and collections management uses, and as a result, they have a hard time matching digital images to, say, curatorial checklists. So as they're planning an exhibit, we'll give them a bunch of images, and we'll be like, these are the ones, these are the images we have of the objects in the exhibit. And then they get a checklist, an Excel sheet from the curatorial side, and then they have to match things up, which feels a lot like this picture. And so, for example, if we have a exhibit with 300 baskets in it, and we give them 1,200 images of baskets, you can imagine what problem it is for them to try to figure out which image goes with which basket and get them into the order they need for the exhibit. So I see my role mostly when I get these user requests as a facilitator. Ideally, we would have a system that would holistically manage all of the different requests that are coming in from all the variety of different departments. And that would be kind of my wish. As IT director, I want to have like a single tool that only, you know, that makes my life easier as far as management goes for their requests. But it's possible that we're going to need multiple tools to handle it, especially with exhibit design also having a desire to have media in the galleries themselves and create access to collections that way. So we have yet to see how that's going to go down. Then on the network side, as I was mentioning, some of the requests coming in have more to do with the network than actual software. One of the things we've noticed is that as we have our 3 campuses, and we have a pretty good system in to exchange data among the campuses, but it's still a problem when you get to digital asset data, and especially if we were going to start accommodating the sound and video files, which we are not really accommodating at this point, talking about it. We need to find ways to work around the limited bandwidth that we have. And then we do have enough storage on our systems right now to accommodate sound and video as well as all the images and image growth. But our backup system is currently at capacity, and so we don't really have the ability to back up, especially when it comes to sound and video, create solid backups that would fit into our standard for what we require for backups. So we're looking at that part of the system too. So what we're going to do is we're going to leverage the fact that we are building out the new building and we're building out that new network simultaneous with the growth in digital assets. And so we're going to set up a cloud backup system from each campus. And then we're going to back up from campus to campus. And that will take care of all of our backup needs as far as offsite and good redundancy. And then we're going to also replicate the digital assets from one campus to the other. And instead of increasing the bandwidth, which has other problems related to our ISPs, we'll just replicate our digital assets from one campus to the other, and that way the browsing through digital assets can be localized, and that way that should take care of that problem. So network side, we're doing pretty well as far as planning and accommodating the variety of requests that we're getting. So that's our current status at the moment. We're still ironing out some of the issues related to access to the digital assets and looking for good systems that will be appropriate for the variety of user groups. But we've got the network side pretty well handled. That should be implemented within the next 6 months or so, and then we'll continue to work on finding the right tools for the users. And I'll hand over the mic to Gary.
Let's use this one.
Anybody have any questions? I have a question, actually. So what are some of the cultural or political challenges you're facing with this right now?
So the entree is actually pretty easygoing. There's not a lot of requirement for hierarchical, we don't have to go up before we go down. We can work laterally easily. We can work around, across departments fairly easily, and it's a fairly friendly environment. I think you were mentioning about one of the big problems we have is everybody's really stressed and maxed out in terms of how much work they have, and taking the time to address these issues and really think through and look for work among the users has been challenging. And sometimes user group will kind of stray off and be on their own little agenda for a little while, and we have to kind of keep our eye on that and try to rein them back in. A lot of times people come to you with a request that you're like, oh, no, you're not going to do that. Then you have to sort of go, okay, well, let me take some time to not react right away and try to figure out exactly what's being said. And the exhibit design group went off and developed their whole proposal, and they were going to build a whole new system and didn't know how to use our existing tools and didn't know anything about them. So we had to kind of like educate, like take the time to circle back, educate the users on what was available and how to get it, and settle them down as far as you know, going in a different direction from the rest of the organization. So there's always a little bit of wrangling that has to take place. So that would be our main like issue, wrangling, more than resistance.
Yeah. Does that sound familiar for a lot of people? You do a lot of wrangling.
It's like herding cats. So
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Okay. I'm coming at it from a different point of view. Just to give you a little background about myself and my museum. That I work at the McNay Art Museum, and my title is Manager of Multimedia and Digital Services. And the McNay was the first modern art museum in the state of Texas. It was founded in 1954 by Mrs. McNay's request, and we currently own about a little over 25,000 works of art. About 2/3 of those are works on paper. And I started my position about 8 years ago. And my thing is bombing. Uh-oh. There it goes. So when I first started in 2008, all the photos were done by contractor. A lot of it was still shot on film and slide, and then a little bit done digitally. And there was no video or multimedia being used at all. And so now, today, I'm not sure what is going on with this slide, but today, in 2015, all the images and audio and video are 100% digital, all done by my department, and we design and all implement all the multimedia integration in exhibitions. And of course, I have a staff of 3, including myself. So that's kind of a little background of what I do. And so I came into the museum world kind of as a producer, as someone who was into audiovisual services, into video production, audio production, photography, things like that. And I came kind of full circle now to what Tim was saying, is that I'm also now dealing with project management and dealing with how to interrelate with other departments, not just producing this stuff. I'm also having to manage the things as well. So this is some of the stuff that I do here. And as you can see, there are some, I do a lot of technical direction. We did one for a performance piece that we did. Some of the multimedia integration that you see there, the spaghetti of cables and everything, was actually for an exhibition that's actually currently up right now. That's it's pushing a lot of those screens that you see over there on the right side. And I also had to coordinate with a lot of both PR and also a local news channel that we did something for the museum. They were doing one of the local shows that they do, so I had to coordinate a lot of that. So so what I'm talking about today is how the producer's point of view of coming to digital assets management. And so this was my first computer, as many of y'all can know. Many of y'all probably had one of these at one point. And so, 64 kilobytes, wow, that's a lot of space. And I remember having like the little cassette deck, it was kind of weird. And this is what I have today. So this is actually the control room to our lecture hall that we have, and there's 3 of us in this office. So besides the control room operation equipment that we have to have, there's 3 of us housed in this little small space. And as you can see, that. So that is my desk. And usually this laptop is also sitting next to it as well. And then we have one person sitting here, and we have the photographer that kind of stubbed in the corner. So, and at this point, it's, it just kind of gets crazy with 3 of us trying to work in there. But So I wanted to go over like what happened with like how sizes of files and such have gone through, and it's gotten crazy. So I'm sure everyone remembers these. Like 1.44 megabytes, something crazy. And then the little zip drives. So if you're the cool kid, you got one of these. Remember jazz drives that were like $200 a piece? Now I have a hard drive that costs $200 and it's like 20 ter, you know, it's like, you know, 2 terabyte drive, it's crazy. And so now what I have is I have about 80 terabytes of external hard drives just in my department. So this makes trying to have it as traditional SAN or NAS not really, it's not practical for us because, you know, 50 terabyte SAN will cost you $50,000 and I would already max it out and there's no way to back that up either. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I started looking around at what I can do. Also give you a little clue is this is also a slide of Moore's Law. And I changed this up a little bit because this one looks, you know, it's a little more graphical. It can show you the different computers. You know, we had this here that no one's ever built. And most people remember this or this. We're right about here now. But Moore's Law, we've kind of already surpassed Moore's Law. It's kind of plateaued off as a hardware sense. If you look every year, everything gets incrementally a little bit faster, but it's a little more efficient, not necessarily faster. But software has become increasingly huge. And because of that software, our file sizes have gotten increasingly huge. So, and a lot of it has to do with the advent of technologies that have just now come into play. And so here are the file sizes that we currently work with. And it's just a little graph that shows, as you can see right here, this is from, as it finishes building, 1985 to about 2005, it was relatively flat. You know, you had, you know, 1985, I think you got a photo that was like, you know, 100 kilobytes if you're lucky. A video would be a meg. And then that was even still almost true up until about 2005 when HD video started to come out. And then with the proliferation of HD video, it got pretty large. Now with 4K video, this is where we're at. For an hour of video at 4K, it's 120 gigabytes or bigger. And that's if it's still somewhat compressed. I just worked with a huge 4K project that we shot with one of our new 4K cameras, and it was 480 gigabytes by the time I was said and done with it. It was insane. So it's half a terabyte, and that's not including the project file, which is 10 times as big as that. So you see what kind of, as a producer of this kind of content, as the media content, you can see the huge problems that I'm facing with where do I store all this stuff. You know, museums are culturally, and rightly so, but culturally, we want to keep everything. But at some point you got to say, well, you can't keep everything. It's impossible nowadays. I do more in a week than I did in the first 6 months I was at the museum. When I was first at the museum, I was doing maybe a one photo project or one video project or audio project. You know, I was doing one a week maybe, or one a month. Now I'm doing 6 or 7 video projects a week, several audio projects, multimedia integration, not including app development and other things as well. So, and we're constantly doing, you know, photography every single day. So for events and all sorts of other things, for education, for development, for PR and marketing. So we're constantly busy, and we're just creating mounds and mounds of data that has to be stored somewhere. And so that's what we get. And so here's a little thing of what producers have to deal with that a lot of people may not know what we do. A lot of the codecs, file types, containers, et cetera, are a huge problem. I mean, some of these y'all definitely will know. Almost everyone knows that. Does anyone know what these are? If you don't, CR2 is a Canon RAW file. That's what we use for our still cameras. DNG is the digital negative file that Adobe came up with. but they keep changing every single year for some crazy reason. We don't know why, but they do. AVC HD is a codec, and it's also a container. It's really confusing. HDV is also a container. Same thing with all this. This is what this ProRes and DNX HD is what either Final Cut users use or Premiere people use for editing video. H.264, you know, and MOV. This right here, if you don't know what that is, that's what basically is on your phone. Okay, so this is what, like, you're playing. If you have an iPhone, definitely the M4A. That's what your music should be playing out of iTunes. Same thing with the video. MP4 is actually what this is, but this is a little different. So we deal with these every single day, and we're like, well, which ones do we keep? What do we do? I don't know what to keep. We just, you know, send them off to the web and let it be done, and then move on. You know, it gets very confusing for us as also a manager, that I have to corral all the stuff that my other associates have to work with, and we get from other contractors. Which ones do we keep? And one of the things I put on here is that there are no museum standards for these large media files. We don't have them because they keep changing for us. I even went outside, kind of like what Tim was saying, and talk about like other industries that kind of deal with the same thing that we're doing, even for profit. I talked with the vice president of CBS Interactive, and also one of the vice presidents in charge of Discovery Communications, which at NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters. So they talked about storage too, and they said, of course, they have millions and millions of dollars to work with. Discovery Communications, if you don't know, the Discovery Channel and all the other channels that go with it, they're still the same way. They're like, we don't know, and we're, you know, build it out. I mean, CBS just built a huge server farm outside of Oakland that, you know, cost them $60 million just for the server farm, just to hold their assets. And they're already talking about, they already built it, they're building another one, because they just run through media like it's crazy. And so, and we don't have that kind of budget. I'm sure most of y'all don't either. But so I had to come up with a solution that would work for us as well. So some of the pitfalls that I have is trying to share a lot of these large files that we have. Some people, you know, we're collaborating between, like, if we're so busy, we have video contractors that have to, you know, we work with, or we have multiple cameras that, you know, we had other people, you know, shoot for us or whatever. You know, this is pretty common. I'm sure y'all seen a lot of this. Dropbox, Google Drive, where you transfer, you send it. The bad thing, this is great for photos, you know, especially JPEGs, 300 ppi, whatever. Not a problem. Video files that are like if they're the raw video file and you need the raw video file so you can start editing, this becomes a huge issue. We don't have the bandwidth. I mean, it could sit there for a day before you actually even get it in, and if it doesn't fail. I've seen Dropbox files fail all the time because it couldn't load it because it ate up the capacity of the, you know, for the throughput and such. So that's what we, you know, I still do this a lot, especially if it's already, you know, been formatted out. But we sometimes I've had to actually mail like external hard drives to people, and then they put it on an external hard drive and mail it back, you know, and then we get it that way. It's actually sometimes faster than trying to do it through Dropbox. And so we've done that. I've done that several times, but it's problematic. So that's kind of what we deal with. So just trying to get all that stuff going, it's crazy. The other issue, of course, is we have to store all these things. And we have this is what we're basically currently storing. I don't know, that's what most people do, is they store it on a hard drive somewhere and it just sits there. You know, the other option is to, you know, like this is a big old NAS right here that looks great. I like NASs, that's what I would probably eventually go to, but they're very expensive. Your IT department has to get involved a lot of times with NASs, and as a producer, you tend to fill these up very, very quickly, and if they're striped in any way, like RAID 1, RAID 5, whatever, that you lose some of your drives, and then so you only have half of them, or third of them or something like that. So then then trying to also put on the network too, and trying to upload them to the network, that causes bandwidth issues. Cloud is, people say, well, just throw it up on Glacier. I'm like, really? Have you heard about how long it takes a 100 gig file to get onto Amazon's Glacier services? I can come back in a month and it may be up. So right now that's not an option. So we're still stuck with basically drives that are basically set to a computer. And the solution that we came up with, which I actually talked with other media producers that are outside the industry, they're in film and television and such, is this guy here, which is the good old Lto Tape Drive. So if y'all are in the hard IT department, y'all know these, you hate these, I know this. But with the new Lto drive systems now, with the LTFS, it looks like a hard drive on your computer, an external drive on your computer. It doesn't know any different. It just takes a second or two longer than your thumb drive, but it works pretty well, and then you can just store these things. So that's what we kind of went with as a stopgap for a true digital assets management that can handle the very large media files, which we're still trying to decide what's going on with that. So this is kind of where I'm at. We do, I just kind of came up with a system myself because no one was doing it. So no one was wanting to talk about digital assets management in my museum at all. And so I just said, well, let me see if I can get a little bit of money and get one of these things. They're not exactly super cheap. They're about $10,000 or $12,000 for something to make it actually work on your computer. But and implement, like, it's a simple software package, and it looks like a file tree and everything else. And I started working with the archives department and the collections department about kind of cataloging what we already currently have, and just do simple files like, okay, these are videos from March 2015, and then we just label every video that way. Same thing with photos from whatever event it was. Just simple right now until we can actually get a software solution to help with that, and then go from there. So that's kind of where I came from, is just going and trying to do research outside of what the museum's doing, because the museums weren't doing this. The museums aren't really doing this yet, and seeing what else other people are doing that are kind of in my area, I guess, expertise. So, and I'm going to leave you with this. Is there any people that actually make content here? Any producers here? Yeah? Any photographers, videographers? Nothing. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this here. And it says, if you could create compelling content that everyone loves, that would just be great. So anyone have any questions?
What's the capacity on the new LTO drives?
At uncompressed, it's 2.5 terabytes. Compressed, it's 6.25. That's compressed 2 to 1. It's a weird combination, but that's how it works. And the tapes are cheap. I'll tell you that. I got them. You buy them in bulk. They're $18 a piece on Amazon. So the system, the drives are kind of expensive, and they just are, because it's kind of a niche product. It's not like they make it for everyone and their daughter. And so the other thing is the drives and then themselves can't directly connect to a computer. So you have to basically build a little computer inside it. And the ones that we got, essentially, we have one that has a tape drive with 2 rated hard drives. So you can dump everything to the hard drives, and the hard drives take care of the rest. And it runs the software inside. You just plug it in, and it just goes. Yes?
Are there parts of media creation that your team doesn't do, infographics or logos or typical design stuff?
We don't do the graphic design side. We actually have, I wouldn't say a department that does that, but education does some stuff on their end. The curatorial team does some stuff on their end. And then we hire out as well for a lot of that. I don't do, none of the print design stuff we do. Generally, it's just all multimedia. Yep.
You identified what you're going to go to next after LTO, and can you share what they are?
We're looking at going with a software system with a scale out NAS that we can go to, and then eventually actually probably still use LTO as a deep archive. Because LTO, like I said, is cheap and it's easy to run once you get it set up and going. So, yes.
I was going to ask, what's your time frame before you go to the LTO, before you sort of don't need constant access to something?
Yeah, that's a bone of contention with everyone across the board for everybody. The archivist says, well, you gotta, you should just automatically send it to me. And I'm like, well, I'm still working on the files. So, so a lot of times, basically, after the videos are finished and they're kind of put to bed, so to speak, that's usually when I start looking at what we need. And I'll back up. I'll back up and say I'll usually keep a project file for 6 months to a year, okay, of the, like, say, the Final Cut project or the Premiere project. Okay, the projects are 10 times bigger than the actual outputted file is. They're huge because they have all the render files inside and everything else. I usually keep those for about 6 months to a year, and then I get rid of them. And the reason why I do that, because I used to get rid of them right away within a couple weeks, and I found out, oh, we want to change something. And I'm like, really? It's already been like up on the web and you want to change it now? And so then you have to then you have to actually recreate it. And it's a lot harder to recreate and when it's been outputted out as a final than it is to just go ahead and you just go right back on the project and trim something out or whatever. So that's kind of, so that's what we do. And then yeah, so that's what we do. We get rid of the project files between 6 months and a year. If it's a lecture, generally they're pretty straightforward, and so all we do is in about 6 months I purge it, just leave the output file. And right now we're keeping the ProRes MOV file, and then the MP4 goes up on the web, and then I don't care about the MP4, really. It's just on the web. So I keep the MOV ProRes file. That's what. And it seems to be because it's a lossless, the color gamut's still there. So I can go back in and edit it if we have to later down the line. So that's happened several times before too. So yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions for the rest of us? So go right ahead. I think we've passed our time, so sorry. Thank you all for coming.